Hello, this is Kava and Tahia, and this will be our second submission into the Art2Ride program. So, for those of you who don't know Kava, he is a 11-year-old fjord gelding, which I've owned for about 5 years now. So, Kava came to me when he was 5 years old. He was just gelded, and he has been my project horse ever since. We spent many years just trying to become friends. And then finally, last August, I found Art2Ride. And it has been a really good journey since. We have been working on all the aspects of that Art2Ride have. And we have also been working in 2 clinics with Lefebvre, and it has been really good seeing the results so far. So in this video, I will be showing the things that me and Kava work with together during both the work in hand, the lunging, and the riding at the end. So in the last video, we'll show Kava doing some riding, or me and Kava doing some riding, and then it will also show some of the things that might happen that you don't actually have any control over. So here in these the first clips that I have here, I will be showing the work in hand. I actually hadn't done any work in hand when I came to the first clinic, so I was really anxious about how to start this, because Kava would be very pushy on ground. He would bolt off and he would kick and he would be not so nice to handle. So it's been a really good progress doing all of this work in hand with him, because it's gotten to the point where it's establishing our connection and the respect on ground and giving us a lot of new tools to work with. So one of the things that I've been working on for a while now with Kava is the fact that he will have the tendency to try to not step to the inside with his inside hind leg. So I have been working a lot with doing a lot of sideways movements with him to actually engage that inside hind a little bit more. And we have also been doing some riding where we focus on that. So, and that has really been helping. We had this situation after the last clinic in May where Karen had a look at my saddle, and she said that she was surprised at how nicely he would work with that saddle. So since then, everything kind of went downhill. The saddle got even worse, and it just didn't fit. So we have been doing a lot of work in hand this summer, and also a lot of lunging and not that much riding. So that's why we'll see later on in this video that we don't have that much, that we don't do that much with the riding just now. So here I'm working Kava, doing just big circles, walk in hand, moving him a couple of steps over just to activate that inside hind leg. So why I'm doing that is because that he does have a tendency to fall over with his inside shoulder. So he kind of tends to lean over to my side. So what I do then is that I actually ask him for more lateral movements when he seems to be falling too much to the inside. And that really helps also with the stretch, but it also helps him to activate more that inside hind leg and actually really stepping over. So he can't cheat and just, poke his neck out. He's a drafty horse type, so for him, having his neck at a very neutral height is not that heavy for him. He could walk like that for ages. So with him, it's more of actually getting the activating forward and then actually having to move over, because he thinks that's it's heavy for his body. So as you could see, I was doing a couple of more lateral movements up there, and then When he does step over very nicely, we just go back to the walk in hand, working on getting him forward, suppleness, and also stepping actively. That has also been a major issue with him. He has been very slow, not willing to move forward, not willing to listen to my aids. So this is actually a really nice walk for him. As you can see right there, he kind of wanted to run away from me instead of actually crossing over and doing a lateral movement. So what I do is that I just slow everything down, almost to the point where I'm stopping him, to actually get that lateral movement, and then we just keep on walking forward again, giving him the chance to actually move over instead of me just trying to rush him over. And again here, asking for a little bit more lateral movements, and then walking forward again. So as you can see from the video, I only got that one side because my phone just decided that it didn't have enough space. So I'm so sorry that I'm not showing both sides or hands on the walk in hand, but I can assure you that he is pretty similar now on both sides doing the walk in hand. So I will show both sides a little bit later on when I'm doing the warm-up from the riding video. So we were doing the lunging on the same day as I did the work in hand. Some days I do both walk in hand and lunging at the same time, and some days I don't. All depending on what kind of mood and energy he is in, and how much time I have. All depending on that, and if I'm riding him after. So I don't usually lunge and ride at the same day. He is not that he's not that high energy, so I like to keep his energy as much as I can from the riding. He's not a bucker. He doesn't bolt off when I ride him, so usually lunging and work in hand is what I do one day, and then I'll ride, and then I'll do a little bit of work in hand before I get on him, just to start warm him up. So here I am starting to warm him up in the lunge. Usually I will start him walking pretty close to him, as I would do when doing the work in hand. Kind of just to give him that little bit of extra support and keeping him forward. He was not an easy horse to lunge when I first got him. He would not move, or he would move very, very quickly or run away. So we've gotten to that point now where he doesn't do that anymore, and he's actually working really nicely on the lunge. So I do tend to keep him on a big circle, but then I do also walk along with him, as you can see here in the movie. Trying to stay in a neutral position, not in front of his shoulder. And as you can see here, I asked him to trot. He always starts his trot this way. He kind of tenses up, nose goes up in the air. He kind of gets that giraffe-like move. And right here you can see that he is kind of fussing over the corner. It's because he knows that the door is down that way, and often in the beginning he will do this. I just don't pay any mind to that. I just ask him to keep on moving forward. And when he moves forward, you can see here really nicely that he is activating his hind more and stepping more actively. So you will see here in the beginning of the video that he will do this every time he gets to that corner. He will just kind of, act like a goofball and just, try to run down that corner. I just try to stay behind him and just keep pushing him forward. So trying not to get too hung up on that corner right there. It's no biggie. It's, what horses do some days. So one of the main things that I have to work with Kava is actually getting that activeness when lunging. Most days he is really willing and will be active, and some days he will give me this. So when I ask him to actually move forward, he'll try to give me a canter and a buck, and then kind of cools down after that. So no big problem. Just waiting for him to calm down again, and just moving along with him, trying to stay in that triangular shape between the lunge line, the whip, and him. Um, and trying to stay calm with the encouragements when he do run nicely forward. A bad habit for the ones that are used to having horses that are a little bit on the lower side of energy is the fact that we always try to keep on pushing them forward. So one of the things that I really have to work with myself now, getting a more active horse, is actually staying calm when he is moving nicely. So as he is right here, he has started to concentrate more. He is stretching more, stepping better under himself, and his nose is at some points here poking more forward, which is what I want, like right there. Since he is a more draftier horse, I am thinking a lot about the fact that he rarely puts his nose all the way to the ground. I don't know if that's because he thinks that that's really, really heavy, or if it's just the fact that he doesn't need to go as low to activate his back and push through. So that will be interesting hearing some of your thoughts on the subject, or if you have horses that are similar, because I do see a lot of difference from some of the horses that we work. So after a couple of rounds during the trot, I will usually take him back into a walk, make the circle smaller and larger as we go, just alternating so he doesn't get too bored with what we do. Also trying to bending him a little bit more on the lunge line, and to get that really nice activating inside hind. So, but still walking along with him, trying to stay behind his shoulder at a neutral position, and only going towards his back if he needs a little bit more engaging, like he did right there. So when he bolts off in the canter like that, I just stay calm and easy. There's no reason to get all worked up. It's just the way he reacts when I'm asking him to do something that he really is not thinking of doing. It's just the way that's just the way he works, so no biggie. See there, after that little bit of walk again, his trot comes on really nicely, and he didn't spend that much time this time coming into a more active trot like he did in the first transition. His head would come up and he would be all kind of like stiff and hollow. But then on the second transition, he is more concentrated, ready to work. His body's more warmer, his body's more balanced. He knows what it's all about. So, of course, he's not, into the stretch at all times, but I just encourage him to move forward, try staying calm when he is working in the frame that I want him to work, like he's doing right now. Giving him lots of praise for that. Trying to not push too much, but also keeping him active so he doesn't slow down too much. So I think that he has a really nice, that's a really nice working trot right there. His head could, of course, maybe be lower, but as I said before, I do think that maybe different breeds have their own opinion of what is the lowest point. I don't know if he actually needs his nose to be all the way to the ground. Here I asked for the canter. and you will see here in the canter that his head will come up in the transition. So here it's really important for me to be active enough to be with him. He doesn't need a lot of support in the canter, and his head will come up. So here you can see that his canter is not really strong. He's kind of stiff, and he needs a lot of push from me. So usually the first time I ask him for a canter, this is what he will give me. Kind of not, it's kind of 4-beaty, or it's not 4-beat at all. And he seems like, sometimes he might even look like he's a little bit lame, but he's not. It's just, I think it's a combination of a habit, old saddle not fitting well, the canter not being smooth and nice and comfortable for him. So he kind of gives me this choppy, bouncy, weird canter. But usually, when I've cantered him for a couple of times, he does settle down and will reach into the stretch, as you will see later on. Right here I am switching sides. So usually I will give him a canter on one side, and then I'll switch over to the other side where usually his canter is better, and then I'll go back to the other side after, because then he's more loosed up. So that's just a way that I've figured that is better for him. It's a way that works really good with him. It might be better ways to do it, but this is the way that I'm doing it right now. So switching sides, giving him a little bit of candy right there, and just making sure that the lunge line is straight and that it's laying nice over his pole, and that nothing's pinching or doing anything that's wrong. So since Kava has had a past of running into me, I often do start him with doing a couple of steps to the side. Today he was being fairly nice with me. He just kind of went on as soon as we got going. So when you will see a difference in these two sides, this has been Kava's more weaker side. His shoulder falls more to the inside, and he also steps, he's just more crooked this way. So I have been working a lot on moving him more laterally and making him step more to the inside, and it has been working really good. So this side has gotten more smoother. I do have to bend him more on this side to actually activate that inside, and I do have to stay further behind his body instead of staying at the neutral position, just to actually push that outside, push that hind outside, more to the outside. So you will see that here. Sorry, the video is kind of far away. It would be easier to see if I had it closer. I was just really wanting you to see everything, so I will make sure to put the camera a little bit closer next time so you will see it. But also here, stretching really nicely, giving me a nice active walk, trying to keep in mind the same things as I do when working on the other side, to stay still and not asking for anything when he is actually giving me what I want. Being patient and letting my hand follow his head down. So as you can see here, I'm being a little bit more active, but also trying to just stay still. So he's stretching really nicely here, giving me a nice active walk. He's reaching, and also he's not too bad with that inside shoulder. This was a really nice lunging session where he was really happy to be working again after a little bit of a couple of days off. So As you see here again with the transition, you see him tensing up a bit. But he pretty soon calms down. I just let him go like that for a round or two. If every time he comes up with his head like that, have to go back down into the walk, I wouldn't be able to do any trotting. So I've just come to the conclusion that he just needs a couple of rounds where he kind of trots like this, and then after a round or two, he settles down, starts relaxing, starts stretching, and settles in. So here I'm just trying to keep the circle as big as possible without me having to run after him, because that is one of the biggest main problems when trying to keep a big circle, is that I have to actually follow him around. I have to stay closer to him, because if I don't, he will slow down to the point where he won't be working through his back and he won't be engaging enough behind. So it doesn't matter the length of the whip, he needs me to be closer. So here he's starting to work really nicely again. As you can see, stretching down nicely forward. Nose is poking out. As I said before, nose is not all the way to the ground, but I do feel that this is a nice working trot for him. He is not creeping behind the vertical. He has nice rhythm. His balance is nice. His shoulder is not falling too much here to the inside. I try to correct it every time it does by bending him a little bit more to the inside and pushing his hind a little bit out. And then just trying to stay still as soon as he responds. Then just trying to keeping him active. So this is a really nice way for him to work. He is giving me really nice movements here. He's being very, very positive. He is being very forward and very willing. So as you can see, I'm alternating between smaller circles, bigger circles, pushing him a little bit to the outside and then straightening him back out again. Also, I feel the need to be sure that I'm not over bending him. He has a really, really large chest, and I do sometimes feel that if I bend him too much or ask for too much bend, he will have problems with actually moving forward. So remembering to if I bend him a little bit to the inside and ask him to step out with his hind, I have to also remember to let go and let him move forward. As you can see here, he's also lifting his tail a bit, moving nicely forward. So obviously feeling supple and, looser through his back. That is what we want. Happy horses. So that's a nice stretch right there. So I just go back into the walk, let him walk a bit, and then go back to the trot. So here his transition is a little bit better. He didn't come up that much with his head, which is good. But as I said, sometimes he does, sometimes he doesn't. So going into canter transition right here. As you can see here, his head comes back up again. Not quite strong enough to get that stretch through the transitions. And here I'm also just trying to stay active, walking alongside with him. Trying to give him enough space so he can stretch. As you can see right there, he is really, really trying. He thinks it's heavy, but he comes down into the stretch there a couple of times, like right there. Trying to reward that with just staying still, not pushing him too much forward, but also not losing the forward activeness, because that's what we need. That's what I need to get him to that stretched point. Then just asking him to come back down into a trot, which he did very nicely. Nice transition right there. He very fast came back to a nice working trot, stretching very nicely down and forward. That's really nice back engagement right there. Then I asked him to come back into a walk, rewarding that nice canter with coming back down into the walk. So that's really nice right there. You can see how he is working up through his back and how he got even more active and higher through his withers and was really carrying himself really nicely. So after seeing that canter on this side, I wanted to go back and work on the other side just a little bit to see if I could get more of that activeness and more of that roundness working all the way through him. So this is what I do sometimes. If I see that one side is really a lot better than the other side, I kind of think that maybe he just needed to loosen up on the side that's easier for him that day, and then I'll just go back and then I'll work on the other side a little bit later. So that's what I did this day. I just decided that, you know what, let's see how the other side works now when you've gotten to loosen up the other side. So just taking him back around. And letting him stretch down into the walk again here. I think maybe he thought that the session was over. So he's kind of, oh, we're going back at it again. All right. So, but as you see, he settles in nicely. I keep him close to me in the beginning just to encourage him to just do a little bit more. You know, he's being a good boy about it. So just working him a little bit more in the walk first before I ask for that trot and that canter again. I don't want to just switch side and then just rush him over and into the canter again. As you can see, the transition comes again like it does on this side, with him kind of pushing up, but then he really soon comes down and starts stretching and working more correctly through his back, like right there. So as soon as he gives me that, I will give it a couple of goes before I actually ask for the trot. As you can see, he has that same corner that he remembered from earlier. Just don't pay any mind to that again. And just keeping him forward. And then asking for the canter, and that was so much better. So I just asked for the canter transition. He transitioned really nicely. Over bending a little bit here because he wants to go down there, but no problems. So as you can see, this is a nice workout for me too, trying to keep that circle as large as I can to keeping him going forward. So if that means that I have to jog a little bit after him, no biggie, I'll do that. Keeps me active too. So this was so much better now going this way. As you can see, he will try to overbend a couple of times. No problem, just trying to keep him forward. And then he was getting tired, so I let him come back into a trot right there. Which he did also very nicely. And then just letting him trot a little bit before going back into the walk. So every time I feel it's important to have them coming down from the canter, that I just don't go straight into the walk at once, because then that actually stops the entire movement through his body. I want him to be able to trot forward and nicely and coming back into the stretch. So the canter usually opens up and gives him more shoulder freedom. So I want to try to use that after the canter. So, and then we just go back down into the walk. And that was it for our lunging session. So in the next clip here, you will see me starting to do a little bit of working hand before my riding session. And the riding session isn't that long, but it is nice, and I will talk about a couple of things that we have been working on. So one thing that I really want to point out is that if you have a horse that seems to be not willing to move forward, and you are wondering if you might have a saddle issue, I would just really advise everybody to have a good saddle fitter come out and check out your horses. That has been one of the main issues with Kava. It has been the fact that he has such a short back that there hasn't been any place for him to actually move. The saddle has been too long, laying on his lumbars, and it's been too narrow at the shoulders, and it has just not been good. And I have been switching saddles 4 or 5 times without actually having anybody finding something for me that was a really good fit. So I bought this Jochen Schlesser saddle this summer in August, and I had it fitted. And what she said that is that, you know, when he starts really working with the saddle, you're gonna need a new fitting, which is true. She fitted it for me in the beginning of September, and actually already a couple of, I don't know, weeks, maybe just a month, I could see that I needed a new fitting because his withers were coming up and he was lifting up through his back. So please, people, if your horse is not willingly moving forward when doing Art2Ride, and you're doing everything right, and you are using all the tips, and you are going to clinics, and you are working your horse, and it still isn't working, please do check out your saddle. If it doesn't seem like it's fitting, or if somebody's telling you that's a poor fitting saddle, please change saddles, or get some help, or do just a walk in hand and lunging. I think it's so many horses that are, like they say, suffering in silence out there because their saddles, they aren't fitting, and you won't be able to do any good if you have a saddle that doesn't fit. So please, everybody, have good saddles. That's going to be my last say on that point. So this was me doing a bit of working hand before getting on his back. I usually start with doing maybe 5 or 10 minutes with a working hand before I get on him, just to kind of warm up his body, get him going, get his mind in the right place. Maybe I'll do a couple of lateral movements to kind of activate that inside hind, keeping him active, just, you know, warming him up, getting him into the zone. So what I have really been working on and pushing on when doing this work in hand is actually getting his nose forward. In the beginning, he would tend to kind of curl up, but as you can see here, his nose is nice and forward. And as I said earlier, it's not all the way to the ground, but I think it's low enough for him. I feel he is working correctly here, being active, moving and stepping over. I bend him a little bit to the inside just to activate that inside hind a little bit more, asking him to step over. He responds really well and comes even lower and deeper down into that stretch. And here you will have video of me riding. So a couple of interesting notes on this video is the fact that I didn't know that he was lame this day. Kava is never lame. He is never off. He has only been that one time before, and that was when I had a farrier come out and do his hoofs, and he actually bled him out on all 4 feet. So with that being said, that was after winter, and this is before winter. You cannot see it really clearly here in the walk. The only thing you can see is that he's not being as active as he has been in the walk earlier these months. So I don't have that many videos of that because we have had this saddle issue. But he is right here a little bit more reluctant than he has been. Not a lot, just enough that I could actually notice it. I was asking this girl to move to the to the circle higher up there. So, but even though he actually was lame this day, he was working really nicely with me. So this shows also that using Art2Ride and having the horses work over their backs and working nice forward, that I could actually walk him for 15 minutes without him actually showing that he had a what we call a nail wound. So what had happened was that because his hoofs, they tend to kind of what do you call it? They float out. So we switched the type of shoe the last time, and then he had to switch back today or on Tuesday because he wasn't working really good with the new shoes. So, and he was surprised the fact that he had floated out that much. So when putting on the new shoes, he had to alternate the hoof so much that he actually ended up putting the nail in a little bit too high for Kava's hoof wall. So we fixed that, and everything was good again. So it wasn't a big problem, but I didn't know it because he had had a day off after getting his new shoes. So as you can see here, right there, he's a little bit slower than I usually would have had him be. And this is also, it was this side that I could actually see when trotting him later that he was more off on his left front. So, but still here he is, even though he's not being as active forward as I would want, he is still stretching down and working nice over his back. It could be better if we had had more forwardness. He would have been even more active here. So, but I could actually feel that something was a little bit different that day. So I was not pushing him too much because he's been so positive for the last couple of months with this new saddle that I was thinking that maybe something is a little bit different today than it has been the other days. So usually when riding him, I will warm him up for about 10 to 15 minutes in the walk. I will do shoulder 4, maybe a little bit of lateral work, shoulder in, and just changing and switching sides. So when I'm in the arena riding with a lot of other people, I try to be considerate of what the other people are doing. So we did have company here on this day, but later on in the video you will see that the company has left. So the girl that's filming me, she can come inside and to the arena. So just here working on keeping the contact, the weight of the reins, and keeping him forward. Trying not to move my seat too much. That is one of the things that I have to remember riding a horse that has been more not as much forward, is that I have to keep my seat still and my aid still when he actually is giving me forwardness. It's very easy to remember how you have been riding a horse that isn't that much forward. So you kind of tend to exaggerate your movements, your legs and your seat, and you're pushing with your entire body to make them go forward. But what you should be doing is sitting completely still And that's one of the things that I work with Kava, is that he has to be his own engine. He has to be willing to move forward without me having to dig into him all the time. He needs to want to move forward, and that's one of the amazing things that I found with Art2Ride, is that when I'm using the techniques and we're in consistent training, he will be much more his own engine. So just trying to keep my hands low. I have been working on trying to get his nose even lower than it is here, both with doing more lateral work and with more stretching. But as you can see, he's quite comfortable being not too low. Here I was doing a little bit of a shoulder 4, and actually here I can see that doing that, he does give me a little bit of lameness. I guess because he had to put more pressure on his left foot, which I think hurt him a little bit. So, but he wasn't being really too much. He didn't show it to me that much, so that's why I kept on riding him, because he wasn't being very, very different than he usually is. He was being, active and stretching and, a little bit slower than usual, but nothing very special. So that was a nice diagonal right there. Nose poking nicely forward. A little bit slow, but nothing major. And he is stretching really nicely here. With the new saddle, it's been like an awakening. He has been so much more energetic, so much more willing to move forward in both the walk and in the trot. So here again, doing a little bit of a shoulder 4. He responded much more nicely on this side, I guess because the weight is more on his inside hind and his outside front foot. So he didn't have to put too much pressure on that left foot right there. So he did that with pretty ease, if I can say it like that. Getting him to stretch during a shoulder 4 or a shoulder in has been also one of the things that we have been working on, because he would tend to come up with his head. Here I am getting ready to do a little bit of lateral work. A couple of sideways steps right there. His head didn't come up too bad right there, and he moved nicely to the side. He did slow down a bit, but as I've been saying, he has been a little bit slower through this ride, so that is something that I will think about for the next ride. So, and then he came right back down into a nice stretch. His nose could be a little bit more forward right there. I think that is also a lack of more engagement from the hind. So if I had gotten him a little bit more forward, like right there, it would have been even better. So then we are switching sides. Getting ready to do a little bit of lateral work on the other side. And that was a nice moving over. As you can see, he is pretty consistent now in the walk at the stretch work. He stretches nicely, goes forward. He knows what I want from him. So he has been a little bit more stiff on this side since my vacation. He had a couple of weeks off, and I also had somebody else come and ride him, so he was a little bit different when I came back. Nothing major. Here, asking him to do a little bit of lateral work. slowed down a little bit right there, but his head was nice and forward, his nose was nice and forward, and he didn't lose too much rhythm. So here I was getting ready to getting into the trot. Started thinking about kind of setting a little bit more tempo. But he was giving me a nice stretch there. So decided to go a little bit more on the circle before we started. So sometimes I will take him up into a higher frame. All depending on the engine that he has on that particular day. So since his engine wasn't as good this day, I decided that I wouldn't be taking him up into a higher frame before I actually got more activeness, which I was hoping that I would be getting when I started trotting him. But you will see pretty soon here that that's not what I'm getting. And I only decided to trot him for a little while before taking him down back into the walk. So as you can see right here, he is definitely off in his left front. His head is coming up. It usually does when I start him, just like on the lunge line. What I wanted to check out was that is this just something that has to do with the fact that he got new shoes? Is he being sensitive? He had winter shoes, or what is this all about? So as you can see, he is trying to stretch here, and the lameness is kind of disappearing, but not all the way. So I didn't end up trotting him around for too long because I don't like trotting around when he's not being himself. And I could definitely feel that something was off, even though he was really trying and he was not being warm or he didn't have anything special happen. So, but I just decided that I wanted to try both sides. Went on for a couple of minutes before we ended the session. So overall, he was being very good, but as you could see, trot work, not being able to move the way he usually does, made me stop this session and take him down back into the walk. So so that ended that session that day. Went back into the walk, and I had the farrier come out and take a look at his feet. So when the farrier found the problem at once, so no problem. So this was our second submission into the Art2Ride Associate Trainee Program. I'm so glad that you watched this entire video, and hoping that it will inspire other people with these type of horses to do Art2Ride. So thank you so much for watching, and hope you enjoyed this video of me and Kava.